Welcome to the 50th episode of the Basketball Fiends podcast, a proud member of the Our Esquina Podcast Network. Joining me today in this momentous episode is my co-host Alex Aguilera. I am Jesus Acevedo Jr. And Alex, the air was crispier today, the sun shined just a little brighter, and food tasted just a dash better, and that's because we have made it to 50 episodes, so congratulations to you, sir.
Congratulations to you, sir. Yeah, man, it's 50 already. That's crazy. And you know, it's fun. Which I still find hilarious is that we're on to episode 50. Like, we've been working with each other for what, about a year or so now?
Just over a year and a couple months, yeah.
Just over a year. Have yet to meet in person.
That's true. That is very true.
So whenever that happens, but like it's weird in this age of COVID, we've gotten to know each other virtually, and it's just like I've only seen you from like the screen of my computer, and that's it.
Right, like who's to know that I'm not an AI, right? That I'm just a computer simulation, and we've talked on the phone too, but that's just voice, you know.
Right.
So we don't have that physical proof that you exist or that I exist. Besides just this virtual window that we have seen each other in for the past year and a couple of months. 50 episodes, you know.
Yeah, man, but hey, it's a cool milestone, landmark, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, man, it's been cool.
It's definitely cool. The bigger milestone, I guess, for now would be maybe 75th. You know, 75th seems like a good next milestone to reach. So, but yes, this is our 50th episode. And you know, Alex, we're not the only one celebrating something this week, as Gregg Popovich, the longtime San Antonio Spurs head coach, recently became the winningest coach in NBA history. And look, Gregg Popovich surpassed Don Nelson, who worked with Gregg Popovich in the Golden State Warriors. Pop, as he's known around NBA circles, joined the Spurs front office in 1984 as general manager, then became head coach in late 1996 when he fired the head coach and named himself the head coach. And I don't believe he even gave himself an interim tag. He's just, I'm the head coach. And first of all, Alex, that's a baller move. You know, you're like, you know what, you're fired, and I'm going to show you that I can do your job better than you by naming myself head coach, not even interim. Full-on head coach. That takes some balls.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I didn't even know that. So to be like, yo, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead, step up, and be the head coach. And people were just kind of like, what is this guy doing? Like, oh, he thinks he's the shit or whatever. He's just gonna go jump from He's just gonna jump from general manager to head coach. Like, come on, now you kind of look back and you're just like, man, that guy knew exactly what he was doing.
It's a testament to the San Antonio front office at the time that they were like, okay. The ownership was like, okay, we trust you, you know, because like you mentioned, he almost had little to no assistant coach experience, like maybe a couple years. But yeah, he just named himself a coach. And look, that has paid off
big time.
Tremendously. I was trying to think of a good verb to say how grand and how tremendous, how big it's paid off. You know, clearly, you know, since 1996, Gregg Popovich has been the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs. He's been the San Antonio Spurs. He has now, after he surpassed Don Nelson, he has 1,336 wins to go along with 5 titles, 3-time Coach of the Year, and easily one of the top 15 head coaches, arguably top 10 head coach of all time in the NBA. And Alex, we both know the enormous respect around the league that Pop has, you know, from the players, coaches, other front office, from the media. You know, I know there's that thing where sometimes his answers to the media can be a bit can go viral for good reasons sometimes, and for reasons where he's just like, I'm just not having it today with the media.
Right. Yeah, and what I like about it too is that, like, you know, you're getting 100% Pop, whether it's a 1-word answer or he gives you, you know, he says what's on his mind. He's like, hey, if the team has played some terrible defense in the first quarter, he's gonna tell you that. Like, you know, he'll be honest with you. So I mean, yeah, like, I think just over the years that we've seen Pop, I mean, just as long as I've watched the NBA, it was like the Spurs are always just that consistent, like, juggernaut at times. You know, you just knew what you were gonna get out of them year in and year out. And I mean, they had that they had their big three with Timmy, Ginobili, Parker, and actually now that you mention it, so he became head coach in '96, and then he ended up winning the title in '99, which
3 short years later.
right. And since then, it's like now I feel like before that, I mean, yes, the Spurs had David Robertson, and before that, I mean, not that I'm a huge Spurs guy, I think George Gervin was probably like, you
Yep.
know, their biggest name player, and since Pop, arrived as head coach, the Spurs went from kind of like, yeah, that team that's been there to a full fledged, like fully respected, NBA franchise.
Yeah, I know it's two franchises that often get compared a lot. And franchises there are completely different sports. It's the New England Patriots and the San Antonio Spurs, and the way they both franchises, kind of started taking off around the same time and becoming legitimate contenders year in and year out. Popovich, a similar coach to Belichick as well. Demands I don't say perfection, but he demands discipline from his players, from the
Yeah,
stars all the way to the bench warmer. He
right.
treats everybody the same. Couple last year tidbits on Gregg Popovich. Rumors started circulating earlier this week that Popovich could possibly coach one more year before riding off into retirement. But here's what I found interesting: an early name that has been floating around has been Quinn Snyder of the Utah Jazz.
Oh,
Now, typically, San Antonio Spurs likes to move up from within, as we've seen,
right,
from GM to head coach.
right.
But Quinn Snyder is no stranger to the San Antonio Spurs franchise. He was a coach of the Austin Toros, I believe that's their G League team, Austin
So
Toros.
yeah,
So he's been, he was part of the family. But look, we'll see what happens. But look, another thing, it's a testament to Popovich is that 6 of the top 7 teams in the league, record wise, are coached by someone who either coached under Popovich, played for him, or worked for the Spurs organization. That is eye popping to see. It's that Popovich coaching tree.
yeah, man. Just the ripple effect, the Popovich effect that has resonated throughout the league, and just sort of the just the influence he's had on players who go on to be coaches. I know, was it Ime Udoka is probably one that just comes to mind right away.
Yep, yep.
He just got that gig with Boston, and I know a
Mike
lot of people,
Budenholzer.
right? Him as well. So, yeah, man, it's like it's so, I guess, crazy to when you really look at it, just like the impact he's had. Even just outside the championships, the 20 years, going to the playoffs is like, holy crap! Like, you know, Papa's had a big influence on this league.
Tremendously. He with San Antonio Spurs, was it 2014 when they faced the Heat, where they started like with their motion offense, and the Heat were just lost in
Yeah,
that finals. That was really when the league took notice and started implementing some of what the Spurs were doing, and kind of where the resurgence of this very offensive minded NBA started. Not want to say they started, but they really pushed pushed the league forward. So no, definitely Popovich, definitely gonna be a coach that I'm gonna miss seeing his teams. You always they were always prepared, no matter who was on the team. Um, for our second topic, I want to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves, Alex. And look, I couldn't be happier to say that the Minnesota Timberwolves are a team on the rise. They've been in the doghouse of the NBA for years, years. They had a couple playoff runs here and there, and by runs I mean they made the playoffs, not necessarily a run in the playoffs, but they made the playoffs. Uh, but look, the team has been 9-1 over the last 10 games. Kind of hot, and they've been riding the hot play of one Carl Anthony Towns, who recently went for 60 points on 7 of 11 from the 3-point range. And I gotta say, when you look at the roster that the T Wolves have, it's a very nice build roster with young stars, a centerpiece, and rugged veterans. The T Wolves big three are who? Carl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, and D'Angelo Russell. And it seems like those big three, they kind of complement each other well. And I'm glad to see D'Angelo Russell finally playing somewhere solid. And by solid, I mean, he's always been a good player, but he's bounced around the league. For some reason, he's finally found like this is his spot.
yeah.
And one other point before I turn it over to Alex, I gotta say the addition of Patrick Beverly cannot be understated. Patrick Beverly's not going to give you much on the offense, but just having him on the team, the roster has been upgraded just by his presence. Something that we're talking about on the ESPN, the last T-Wolves game earlier this week, was that since Patrick Beverly got there, he's got the team more connected in that they go out and do things. They go out and have dinners. Like they're always doing something together to build that camaraderie, that togetherness, and it shows. I mean, look at the T-Wolves, how they're playing.
Yeah, and I like that you make the point about Patrick Beverly. I mean, you're not gonna get really scoring out of him, but you're gonna get like 150% effort and grit out of him, especially on the defensive end.
Yeah.
And honestly, switching it to like Anthony Edwards, it's kind of nice to see that he sort of, not that he struggled when he got into the league, but now you're starting to really see a star emerge out of him. Because I want to say he's averaging like 20 points, something like that. So you're getting a lot of consistency, out of him, and sort of being like that nice little 1-2 punch beside Carl Anthony Towns. And I love the point you mentioned too about D'Angelo Russell. It seems like he's finally found a nice home in Minnesota. I remember like when Brooklyn had picked him up. I really liked that move, and
Hmm.
he was an all-star. Because I think he was only there for like 2 seasons or whatever. But one year he was an all-star, and I was like, man, like Brooklyn finally got a solid dude. Like D'Angelo Russell has finally found a place that he can settle down in. And then he was gone like
Yeah.
after year two, and you're like, what the hell? So it's definitely nice to see him flourishing with an up and coming Minnesota Timberwolves team.
And something I got to mention about Carl Anthony Towns is, with Joe and B, Nikola Jokic, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, it seems like Town has almost been forgotten about. Like, whenever we talk about this resurgence of the bigs, I
Yeah,
feel like this season, Cat is like, "Oh, you're gonna pay attention to me. Like, you're
very.
gonna you're gonna look at what I'm doing," and he has to be, named, with those other bigs. Granted, he's the fourth on the list, but I he has the skills to still level up, and maybe next season, maybe he uses this season wherever it ends up for the T-Wolves, which right now is looking at playing. It would not surprise me if they were to sneak in that 6th seed. It'll be tough, but I think they can do it. But even if they just play in the plane, I think they'll still advance to the second round. But I think he can use this push, this momentum to maybe start building on an MVP campaign for next season. Because I feel like this is the first year that Chris Finch, their head coach that they hired midseason last season, this is his first full season, and we're starting to see some of what he wants to do clearly, right? Because they're playing better. But this T-Wolves team, they can score. They
Yeah.
can score, and then they got some. Like I said, they got a good, strong defense with Patrick Beverly leading them. So this T-Wolves team is definitely on the rise. And as you mentioned, Anthony Edwards and DeAndre Russell, something that they do really well is they drive to the basket. They attack the rim, Alex. And the reason why I bring up teams in this case, the T-Wolves driving with Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell, is that as a whole, all NBA teams are driving more, attacking the basket a lot more this season. And Alex, this topic comes about because I found this article from Fansided on their Step Back newsletter, and they pretty much went through the numbers. And essentially, yes, NBA teams are driving more than any previous season. And for the purpose of this article, they said that any drive where a player catches the ball at least 20 feet from the basket and dribbles within 10 feet of the basket. So yeah, so I found that very interesting. And once you kind of step back and kind of, like the newsletter, step back and kind of see, you can see why that is. Like we said earlier, since 2014, 2013, since the Spurs started doing playing their motion offense and just having everybody move around constantly and have the ball just ping, 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 zing, zing, tiki taka. Uh, NBA teams have started to play more offensively. We've had some high scoring games. Teams are taking more threes and they're taking less mid range. And I think that's why teams are attacking the rim more. Because when they get inside the 3-point line, as opposed to stop and pop for mid range, they're going full on to attack the rim. Because guess what? You can get a bucket, or guess what? You're going to get fouled. Um, so yeah, but I find it very interesting that this season in particular, teams are driving more than any previous season.
Yeah, and I guess I get the mindset about it too, where I guess if you want to bring in the analytics about the mid range or whatever, but just common sense. It's like, hey, if you're closer to the basket, that's a higher percentage shot. So it's like, why not try to go for the easiest shot possible, by driving to the basket? And like you said, worst case, if you get fouled, you get fouled. Or if you got some spectacular guard who can do some acrobatics in the air and still, make the bucket, then hey, he makes the bucket. Um, or either that, you kick it out and you shoot a three. I mean, less percentage shot, but it's sort of that high risk, high reward type of deal. So, I mean, it's interesting how once again we've seen the NBA transition from that mid-range game that we saw with the Jordans, the Kobe's, and now we're seeing a little resurgence with with like DeMar DeRozan. But for the most part, you've seen this new age where you got guys shooting at the logo, oops, excuse me, and like shooting from three consistently,
Yep.
and it's like, hey, it's fun to just see guys, put up, hit 5, 6 threes, in a game or something like that. Or if not, they're going to, posterize someone at the basket. So I definitely see, I guess, the strategy aspect of it, but also just, once again, in, as a whole, just seeing how like the game has transitioned into that.
Yeah, and there's been some accompanying benefits to teams attacking the rim more. As a whole, once again, the NBA is passing more out of drives, and that's very logical, right? Because if a player is continuously attacking the rim, they're going to have to start bringing two players, so or double teaming him when he drives in, or trying to trap him, and that's going to always leave somebody open. Another accompanying benefit is that there's been more catch and shoot threes this season than in previous seasons for that same reason, is that more players are open because more players are attacking the rim.
Right.
So,
Excuse you.
excuse me, yeah. Well, that was a cough more than a sneeze, but yeah.
Goes
So
without
yeah,
saying.
so so one thing I've thought about is how offensive the league is right now. Is will it ever go back to what it was like? I'm talking about like the mid
Yeah.
'90s, early 2000s,
Yeah.
when the league got very defensive. Which I like. I was okay with, but I will agree having this kind of uh offensive heavy league right now is better for entertainment.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if it'll ever go back, or you know there's gonna be one team that just says we're just gonna score 80, 85 points. We're just gonna defense all night long.
Right. And you know what? I think that's what makes it fun is now we kind of don't know, what's next for the NBA per se, as far as like play style. We got so accustomed to the mid-range game for so long. And just a lot of team ball where I would probably say like, going back to the Spurs, they were probably like the last team that you saw that really try to utilize every single guy on the floor to make a basket. And now you've seen it transition now where you kind of rely on one or two guys on the floor heavily. So it's, I think that's just like the mystery and fun of it is like, hey, who knows, maybe it may stick around. This may just be how the NBA operates moving forward. Are people gonna have a problem with it? Maybe some, but at the same time, it's gonna be fun and exciting to just see a bunch of points just being scored, on a nightly basis. But hey, who knows? You have like these little what's the word I'm looking for? Um, I guess that essence of some of the ways basketball was played before. So who knows? Teams might turn back the page and say, hey, you know what? Let's reincorporate this play style back and see how it works out in today's game. So
I definitely think we could see the mid range coming back after this season, because I think this season, yes, while more players are attacking the rim and more teams are attacking the rim, I think those that have that can use the mid range to their advantage. I'm talking about Devin Booker, DeMar DeRozan, Kawhi
yeah,
Leonard, players of that caliber. To me, that's their bread and butter. To me, those players, it's almost as good as a layup. Like
yeah,
with how consistent they are from the mid range, especially DeMar DeRozan. Like I swear, once he gets in the mid range, I'm like, it's over. It's a bucket,
hmm,
or he's gonna get fouled.
right,
Um, but I think it's also as there's a lot of young players in the league right now that love to attack the rim. John Moran, Trey, Ice Trey from the Hawks.
hmm,
So as some players get older, they start to attack the rim less. And I was like, okay, now let me do my mid range, such as DeMar DeRozan, which to his credit, he was always doing mid range, but he would drive
Yeah,
attack a lot more than what he has now in his age. But I'm telling you, the mid range for him is like a layup. Like he's so
yeah,
automatic. But I do think we might see the return of the mid range for sure.
yeah.
Uh,
And I think, sorry, just one more
yeah, yeah.
point that I want to make. Just sort of the way now I think we view the 3 point shot now. Before it was like, holy crap, like why would a team be chucking up a bunch of threes? Well, now we're just so used to it, and now we see players, consistently hit a three. Hence me like a Steph Curry, a Klay Thompson, where for them that's damn near a layup.
Hmm.
So, I think the point,
Yeah,
to your point is like, hey, players that have a feel for the mid range and can utilize that. It's like, hey, if they're consistent enough, then you may see a renaissance of the mid range coming back where, hey, if that's a guy's bread and butter, that's basically a layup for him. So it's like, hey, give him the ball ISO, or I don't know, create some space that allows him to get a mid range jumper off. So it's like, hey, who knows? So
yeah.
yeah, that's why I said it's fun. It's fun to think about because you're like, hey, who knows? We'll see.
Who knows? You know what else? Something we don't know is who's gonna lift the trophy at the collegiate NCAA basketball tournament. March Madness is here, Alex. Buzzer beaters and upsets galore. So we are back to March Madness. Now, I'll be honest, Alex. I haven't kept up with college basketball a lot this season, but not that the tournament is here. I have to tune in. I have to watch some of these games. But I'm also like hitting myself, because I didn't fill out a bracket in time before the tournament started.
Oh.
I kept putting it off. I was like, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. So I could do a little bit more research, a
Mm.
little bit more research. And then I was like, some unexpected things happened live where I had to take care of, and I could not take time to fill the bracket. So yeah, so I don't have a bracket filled out, but I do have a winner, of course, that I hope wins. One that my heart wants to win, and one that my mind thinks will win. But before I get there is one matchup, Alex, that I'm think we're both going to be very interested in, because I was looking at the brackets. One matchup. I hope we get this one matchup in the second round, and when that's in the South region, where we could have the University of Houston face off against the University of Illinois.
Yeah.
That's right, my alma mater versus Alex's alma mater. So, Alex, we need to put this out into the universe. We need this to happen. We need a U of H Illinois matchup.
That it was funny. So I'm filling out my bracket, and I'm going through the regions, and finally hit South, and I'm like, all right, let's see, what matchups Illinois might have, because of course,
Right,
the fan in you, that's your school, and it's like, hey,
right.
I want them to go far. And so I'm like, okay, this is their first round matchup. I'm like, okay, who could they play in the second, and so on and so forth. And I see, I'm like, hey, wait, Houston's in this region, and I'm like, oh crap, like we might actually match up against Houston. So it's like, oh snap, and like I knew you were gonna bring it up, and I was just like, man, like once we record, I know Jesus is gonna bring it up, and I know in some brackets I actually got Houston getting upset in the first round because
Oh,
they're the fifth seed, and I'm just like, and I love picking like 12 seeds over fifth
yeah.
seeds, and actually Indiana just burned me, and that sucks, but whatever. Um, but I was just like, ooh, so like I do have some brackets where I have Houston, obviously moving on. Playing against Illinois, and I'm just like, ooh, like I want to see it. Just
Yeah,
I
same.
want to see it.
I actually think it'll actually be a good match for both teams. I think if they can get past, if U of H can get past Illinois, so Illinois can get past U of H, I think either team, one of those two could go to Elite Eight, and yeah. But I think, like I said, I have kept up with U of H. They're once again a strong defensive team.
Yeah.
Even with the injuries in Illinois, they just seems like they just picked up from where they left off. I don't feel like it didn't seem like if when they lost. Once again, I'm gonna say his name wrong.
You want me to
I
say? You want me to
just
say?
say it. Play it. Say it.
So yeah. So Ayo Dosunmu is gone. He is with his hometown Chicago Bulls now. So with that departure, obviously it hurts. But we brought a lot of guys back
Yeah.
from
Hmm.
from last season. All American Kofi Coburn. You got fifth year senior Trent Frazier, which is crazy because I remember when he was a freshman and I was covering him, and he's still there, and I'm gone, and I'm just like, oh man, I'm not old, but like that makes me feel old because I saw just his ascension from like this unknown guy, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden he went from unknown freshman to like, hey, this could be the guy
Yeah.
for Illinois. And then Ayo came in, and he kind of took a step back a little bit, but was still always just like a consistent player. And now he's that like true vet in the tournament now. So yeah, I mean, just a little nice mixture of youth and veterans on the Illinois squad. So yeah, I mean it's cool to watch, and it's been fun to just see these guys that I went from covering when they first came in, being these unknown guys, to all of a sudden now they're pillars in this program.
So clearly, both of us each our heart wants our alma mater to win. But
Yeah,
if I'm honest and I look at the college basketball, you know, I my head tells me this has to be Gonzaga's year. Like
yeah,
it has to be. I know I picked them last season. I'm picking them again this season. They're gonna win a freaking
and
title. I think I'm on the Chet Holmgren bandwagon. I think he is some kind of talent. I think I mean, I beyond this tournament, I wonder what he does if he comes out or stays, which I think he's going to come out. He'll be not dumb to not come out, but I think it bodes better for him to come out. But no, that's my pick with my head. Once I analyze it, that's what I think wins the whole thing. Gonzaga.
uh, well, I guess it's unfair. Well, I guess kind of unfair because I got like 5 brackets, so like I have multiple winners. I do have one Gonzaga bracket, and actually, it's my worst one. Which is actually kind of funny because it was the first bracket I filled out, and typically
Mm.
when I fill out brackets, usually the first bracket that I do is usually my best one, and actually this year is my worst one so far. So I'm kind of like, huh, that's interesting. But I do have a Gonzaga bracket. I got a Baylor bracket. I got a Kansas bracket. I got an Auburn bracket, and of course I got an Illinois bracket. But I was just like, you know what? Let me spread out the love a little bit. Just
Spread it out.
if there's a better chance for me to win the pool, because there's like a bunch of there's just like three. I was telling you this before we recorded. We have like damn near 400 brackets in this one pool,
That's a
because each
lot.
because like each person gets 5 brackets, and like there's I don't know how many people there are, but if someone does the math, because I'm definitely not gonna do it, it adds up, and there's a bunch of brackets. And so right now, no one has a perfect bracket anymore. Definitely
Wow.
because of that Kentucky
Yeah, St. Peter's
upset.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the alert that they're going into overtime, and I was like, you know what? Let me check out this game. Let me just see what's gonna happen. And sure enough, you see St. Peter's just hanging in there with Kentucky, and I'm like, I mean, not that I really had Kentucky like making a huge run, but I was like, this is gonna suck because no one's gonna have a perfect bracket if St. Peter's pulls it off. And once they did, I was like, damn it, another year where I don't go through the first day.
without yeah,
So
without busting it.
yep.
The other team I would love to win, uh that's like my heart's pulling for UH obviously, but a little bit of my heart is pulling for Duke just because I like to see Coach K right off into the
Ah,
sunset.
okay.
But they would have to go through Gonzaga if that
Yeah,
was the
man.
case, which would be
Yeah.
tough. But look, Duke has some talent. It would not surprise me to see Duke make the Final Four for sure. They definitely have the talent. But yeah, so that's the other team I'm pulling for. I like to see Duke just to see Coach K right off into the sunset with the title.
Yeah, that would I mean, you talk about like I mean,
Institute.
I don't know if you would call it a Cinderella because it's Duke,
Right.
but just sort of like just the perfect send off for Coach Krzyzewski. It's kind of funny. I grew up watching Duke as sort of like my
Really?
college basketball team coming up, just because I didn't, I wasn't into college
Yeah.
sports like that, and I was just kind of like, okay, this Duke team is pretty good, so I'm gonna roll with them. So that was like my team kind of growing up, and then as time went on, I started watching more college basketball. I was like, like I mean, there's still a part of me that likes Duke just because
Right.
I grew up on them, so I have a soft spot for them. That's sort of like my, I guess, guilty pleasure team that I know that I like and just everyone despises, but it is what it is. But yeah, man, Duke definitely has like a lot of young talent.
Yeah.
That hey, you know, with the recruits Duke's always gets every year. I mean, they're always going to be in contention no matter what. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think they could kind of make a run. I mean, it's Duke, but yeah, once if there's a matchup between them and Gonzaga, I mean, that's going to be tough,
Yeah.
or would be tough.
It will be tough. Yeah, we're definitely gonna keep a topic about March Madness going on until the last week of March Madness. So probably for what 2-3 episodes for the next. You can expect an update on this basketball tournament. But that was all the topics we have for you today on this 50th momentous episode of the Basketball Fiends podcast. We have 25 more to go for 75, and then 50 more, obviously, for 100. But thank you so much for joining us on this journey that is the Basketball Fiends with Alex and myself. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe. See ya.
Deuces.